you don't know, this was a case of a couple, the Pilios, the man and wife, that were both contracted non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which they believe was due to using Roundup over many years. After 7 weeks, jury was asked these 3 major sort of sections. Did Roundup cause it? Did Monsanto know? And did they engage in fraud or malicious behavior, which is where the punitive part comes in. Are these auto-advancing?
Yep. Yes.
You just said
Okay. So this was a civil trial, so it was just needed to be more likely than not for each of the things we were asked to determine. It didn't have to be beyond a reasonable doubt, which was important because it was not. So Roundup contains 3 parts. Glyphosate is the active ingredient. So most of the studies that are referenced in here are just on glyphosate. It also contains a surfactant, which helps the glyphosate enter the plants. POEA, I don't remember what it stands for, but that is the surfactant in the American version of Roundup, which is known by Monsanto to be toxic and is banned in Europe, but still use it here. So Roundup came on the market in 1974. EPA approved it based on some studies that were then in 1980 discovered to be part of this bigger scandal, and they were thrown out, and so they had to do new studies. They did a replacement study, showed it was like super carcinogenic, so EPA decided it was a carcinogen. So Monsanto, after working with the EPA, a lot of back and forth, Monsanto hires this guy specifically to find tumors in the control group of the mouse study, which then throws off the relevance of the study. He found them. EPA was confused. What's going on? Told him to do another study that they just never did. Don't know why they were able to just not do it, but they never did it. So the EPA, when they approve things, they look at industry-sponsored mouse and genotox studies, which are in vitro studies. Their decision to approve it cites a bunch of papers that have been shown to be ghostwritten by Monsanto and other weird stuff. All this came about because IARC, which is part of the World Health Organization, in 2015 labeled glyphosate as probably carcinogenic. Once that happened, a bunch of lawyers got all uppity and decided they could sue over stuff. Dr. Portier was an animal study expert. He wrote EPA guidelines. He was a witness for the prosecution in this case. He wrote the EPA guidelines and says that they were ignoring them. Dr. Weisenberger is a pathologist. He's also an author on many of the epidemiology studies that were used by both sides in this case. He believes that his studies show that it is carcinogenic. Every mouse study we saw that was admitted as evidence showed that it was carcinogenic. Supposedly there are others that don't show that, but we never saw any of those. One statistic that really stood out in deliberations was that 70% of all independent peer-reviewed studies showed that it is genotoxic, but only 1% of the industry studies show the same thing, which seems odd. Epidemiology, if you don't know, is the study of diseases in a population. The epidemiology in this case was fairly weak. This was a big focus of Monsanto, saying that there's not a lot of evidence that in the real world it causes cancer. Monsanto's case basically was to say, bring a bunch of doctors to say, just to say what causes cancer. We don't know what caused their cancer. Jury questionnaire. So yeah, in deliberations, we were looking at these. We were unanimous in fraud. We're also unanimous that it could cause cancer, but one person thought it didn't cause their cancer. But people look at the verdict, see that it shows that it causes cancer, but really, in our deliberations, our decision was more focused on the fraud aspect because there was crazy fraud stuff going on with Monsanto. So that's really why we came to the decision. People interpret it as being Roundup as like super cancerous or whatever, but I mean it probably is, but it's only more likely than not. I don't know. But Monsanto is definitely acting in creepy ways. The end.
How much did they get?
Yeah. Thank you for that. This is like kind of what I remember doing preparing.
Mm-hmm.
How were you selected? And did you not want to wiggle out of it like most American citizens?
I've been on a couple other juries. It's really fun. I highly recommend it if you've never been on a jury. It is super cool.
Everything to get out of it. No.
It's so fun. It's really interesting. But they basically, it took a long time to pick a jury because most people hate Monsanto. I also had negative opinions of them, but I didn't know anything about this particular issue, so I figured I could remain impartial. I don't know if it caused cancer going in, so that was sort of the focus. Oh, you had your hand
Thanks.
up.
I was on a jury for a criminal case, so did you have to have unanimous decision for the jury, or could you do like?
No, it only had to be 9 out of 12, but it was unanimous.
Okay.
Which all of these ones so far against Monsanto have been unanimous.
Wow.
You had first.
Do you recall the questions that they asked you when they were trying to weed you out before you were chosen?
There were a
No,
lot.
you didn't.
They
No.
asked,
Ah.
They're trying to
Enough
round them
fun.
all up and
Yeah.
figure out.
It was basically just, what, have you heard of Monsanto? It was a lot, and it was a lot of weird, like just your own experience with cancer and how you felt about the burden of proof issue being more likely than not, rather than beyond reasonable doubt.
How did they educate you to be able to, like, take in all this information about cancer and mice studies and like surfactants and be able to like understand what they're talking about?
Yeah, so it sort of comes down to, I mean, every witness, almost every single witness was just an expert witness. So it sort of comes down to, you're given these experts, they give you their credentials, they interpret it, and then you decide, is this guy full of crap or is the other guy full of crap?
Yeah.
And so it's more about looking at the studies to see who funded them or whatever bias that might have been there, and then deciding which person you trust more. I mean, everyone's getting paid, and who knows? But
Yeah.
So I'm wondering on the slide about how the EPA makes its decision. I felt like we missed a little bit of that, and I'd like to see if we can maybe go back to that because I'm really interested in EPA.
Oh yeah, so this was also an interesting thing. So all this, when they talk about safety in their decision to approve Roundup, it's all focused on trace amounts of glyphosate like in the food chain that consumers eat, but they don't cite anything related to people actually using the product and spraying it and like getting it on their skin.
Was that out of the studies too?
No. The studies they look at are in vitro and mouse studies, so it doesn't really matter to those. Yeah.
And do you have?
Sure.
Do you happen to know whether the studies were looking at like the level of like contact, like were the mouse studies like a dosage level that you would get in real life, or?
No, but they do that intentional. I mean, in mouse studies, you have a limited number of mice, so if you know that, or if you're wondering if something is going to cause cancer in a large population, you need to give them a very high dose, the highest dose that they can tolerate, basically, or else you're not going to find out something causes cancer. Because if it only causes cancer in like 5% of people, that's a lot of people, but when you're talking about like 20 mice or something, or 100 mice or whatever, you need to be sure that you catch it.
How contentious or unified were you guys when you first entered the jury room as to the answers to those questions, or how much you believe the specific witnesses?
It was pretty hilariously uniform that we all agreed on almost every single point. I did not expect that going in, because people definitely, I mean, we're very different people, all 12 of us, but everyone was very, like, it was just a matter of how much are we going to decide against them.
So how much did they have to pay, and what happened to the defendants?
Well, the actual ruling was, I forget, it was like something like $40 million for the couple.
They got $40 million.
I mean, they haven't gotten anything once that
Right.
was going everything, but the punitive part was $2 billion, which obviously they're not going to pay $2 billion, but they were asking for $1 billion, and we decided, why not $2 billion? Sure.
So it's up to you guys to decide that then?
And is the
Yeah, it's
couple
dumb.
sick? Are they? I mean, they've got medical and they're dying.
Both of them are actually in remission, so they're okay now. And what the wife is much worse off. She has to take basically like a chemo. It's an experimental thing. It's a chemo drug. She has to take it every day for the rest of her life. That will hopefully work, because hers is in her brain. It's like a whole complicated issue.
Okay, 2 questions. First one, did you make friends with the other jurors? Like, you saw buddies, you wrote, you want to talk about this thing?
One was just at her house. The other, like a week ago or something. But yeah, and we had a barbecue like a month later. We're planning another one.
Oh, wow, that's bizarre.
And then my other question is, did Monsanto try to like convince you and bribe you? And if so, why didn't you do that?
They did not. Although we did find out afterwards in reading back the transcripts that they were like spying on us or something, and
TV shows.
yeah, it was weird. We weren't aware of it
Like,
at the time.
personally or in the deliberation room?
Around it was sort of unclear. They had people there like planted that would like follow people around. So I don't know how far they followed us.
How did that come out in the transcript?
Maybe they were your barbecue.
Because the plaintiffs found out about it and brought it up to the judge. So, like, they talked about it when we weren't in the room, obviously, because of the details.
Has your opinion of Monsanto changed after this?
I mean, I think they're way worse than I thought they were before.
Wow.
They definitely, there was a lot, this was also the first trial where we got to see, like, all their, like, internal memos and emails and stuff. So it was much clearer that they were doing and whatnot.
2 questions.
Yes.
Why were all the industry studies excluded from evidence?
We were really wondering that, because Monsanto basically never provided any studies showing that their product was safe. So it was a very easy decision when you're only shown evidence that it is not safe.
And there's a general opinion that the side that spends more money tends to win. How much, could you guesstimate how much more money Monsanto spent and why didn't it work?
I mean, both sides were spending crazy money.
Who was on the victim's side?
Afterwards, looking up the lawyers and stuff, I know that on both sides they were like top lawyers in the country. I don't know. The thing that the jury kept wondering was why Monsanto's case was so poor, and so the only thing we could assume is that they just didn't have any better evidence to show us, or it seems like they would have shown it to us.
So I looked it up, and Monsanto's revenue is like 2.3 billion. So I guess there's a question of like, at what point, like, do you think that like a wrongdoing by a company is like bad enough that they should be put out of business? And do you think that this qualifies, and should that be even a consideration?
So there are rules about that, but they don't tell the jury what they are. Or the whole money thing is really dumb, the way they deal with it in civil trials. Basically, we knew that it was going to get slashed, whatever we said. So it kind of.
Yeah.
We're not going to put Monsanto out of business. Like, there was no. We did not think that was going to happen.
Sure.
Or should it have?
I don't think they should necessarily be out of business. I think they should just do things in
less shady ways.
witness.
Yes,
Okay.
less shitty witness.
One more question.
Okay.
Did it become clear during the trial whether there were particular executives at Monsanto? Like, were their names revealed, and like, could you, like, not everybody working at this company is going to be evil, but probably certain people are incredibly greedy and willing to do shitty things for more money.
Yeah.
Did
they-
you learn about those people, or
Oh
is there
yeah, I
anything-
saw their emails and saw them give depositions, and they were interviewed on camera, like they weren't in the actual courtroom. But
Is there any
yeah,
like
this is Bill
anybody
Hyden's
going
guy,
after
that
them?
dude. Donna Farmer, she was also pretty sneaky. Basically,
Just call them out.
Bill Hyden's is in charge of like research and development, so would have been people paying to do these studies, and they kept having internal people recommending they do these studies, and then they just kept saying, well, we're not going to do that,
Right.
and coming up with ways of ghostwriting papers and whatever, getting around it.